This is an audiobook reading of Cemetery of the Lost Soul, a novel by Spencer Webster. Copyright 2015, all rights reserved by the author. Chapter 5, The Offlander. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Julius felt something snake around his body and jerk him upward. His body was laid down on the pitching deck of a boat. Is this what death feels like? Weird, he thought. A uniformed woman leaned over him and put her ear to his chest. His heart beats faint. Gonna start CPR, she yelled. She wiped her finger through his mouth and Julius wanted to gag, but he had no sense of control. I'm here! I'm alive, he thought, though I don't know how or why. He willed his voice to utter the words, but nothing moved within him but his heart. His headache was gone. He could be happy for that. A corona of light around her head gave him the distinct impression she was less a woman and more an angel. Her dark brunette hair waved in the wind. The blue lapel of her uniform captured his imagination, as if the image she presented had been constructed out of Van Gogh brushstrokes, dark and beautiful. Again and again he tasted the softness of her mouth, and he watched her, checking that his lungs collapsed, then reinflated. As oxygen pulsed through his blood more and more, he began to feel his toes, faintly at first. His stomach heaved and water flowed out of him. The angel rolled him on his side, and Julius let the ocean flow forcefully out of his body as his diaphragm contracted. The whole of his body felt as if it had been stretched too far, rubber band-like, and then snapped back into place. His eyes burned as if the whole ocean's salt had been ground across them. Blinking hurt, but it was all he had to soothe them. I think we got him in time, the woman said with a compassionate smile. Wonderful, a gruff male voice said. Wrap him up in a blanket or I'm going to puke. After a brief pause, he added, and scan him for his number. I don't want to bring the governor incomplete paperwork. You know how irritable he gets when paperwork is not done properly. The woman looked at Julius with an unreadable expression. Don't let Sarge get to you too much, he said as she covered his cold, naked body with a coarse woolen blanket. Julius tried to sit up despite his diaphragm's continued contractions. Take it easy, guy. We're not in a race here. Now I have to take a look at your arm. Procedures, you know. Julius looked from the woman to the pilot house where the Sarge drove the boat. Julius could hear radio traffic from tinny speakers inside the cabin, unintelligible and foreign words flowing into one another in a verbal soup. Sarge's large hands gripped the wheels, and he reminded Julius of someone familiar, but he couldn't recall who it was. He also noticed the man's pistol. He wore a starch camo utility cap, fatigues, bulletproof vest, and shiny black boots. Every once in a while the Sarge would bring a radio microphone to his mouth and speak into it. Something felt sinister, and fear crept around the margins of Julius's mind. Where are we? You mean besides being naked and mostly drowned on a boat in the middle of the ocean? Technically, you're not in the middle of the ocean, but you're at the edge of the deep waters. The woman smiled, but we're headed to shore now. How did you find me anyway? I don't want to be rescued. Julius looked at the wide waters the boat moved through, and he saw no land. But I guess I appreciate that you pulled me out of the water. I'm glad we were in the right place at the right time. We conduct routine patrols in the waters around our island, St. Jade Lusum Island, and maintain a strict cordon to control unauthorized travel into or out of our private island paradise. Corporal Olethea, I'd recommend ceasing the needless prattle and scan it before we get into port. Julius stared at the sullen man as he held his arm out to the woman. An audible intake of breath by the woman named Corporal Olethea distracted Julius. You don't have a wrist code? What do you mean, a wrist code? She showed him her wrist, and he saw a square tattoo consisting of several interconnected black pixel-like squares with 3 reference boxes. The woman brought out a cell phone-looking device and scanned her wrist with it. She showed him the resulting information screen, which displayed her photo and a concise personnel dossier. Name, Cora Olethea. Number, 3267-037. Gender, female. Rank, corporal. You're required to have a wrist code like this to exist on the island. The governor forbids offlanders from getting to the island. That's enough talk, Corporal Olethea. Bind him to the rail, now. What's he going to do, jump back into the water? You're such a lummox, you know. Julius felt confused by what was happening, but he understood fury. Sarge slammed the throttle to full stop and jumped onto the deck between Julius and the woman. Julius smelled cigar and body odor in the air, which reminded him in a way of his father. If you ever undermine my authority in front of a prisoner again, so help me, I'll throw you over the side. You got me? Sure thing, boss, she said as she pulled a zip tie from her holster. Give me your wrists, she said as she averted her attention from the Sarge to Julius. I gotta tie you up so you don't escape. He watched her grit her teeth as she tightened the tie. Sarge stalked back into the pilot house and jammed the throttle forward, and the boat lunged beneath them all. What's going on here? The woman shook her head, and Julius couldn't comprehend why the Sarge put his hand on his pistol.